We are looking for people beyond me to come to the mics. Barry, we'll start with you at the back mic. Just give us your name, Barry. Thanks.
Barry Gross. I just wanted to share a couple thoughts for what they're worth. Because first of all, I just want to say this is great. This is a great breakfast break. I'm a retired actuary, just came over from Victoria to check this out, and I'm very much enjoying my time here, so thank you. I guess one thing that was touched on, but I mean, retirement is no longer a point in time. Retirement seems to be a zone, right? The period from full employment to fully not working for a lot of people is a period of time, it's not a point. And I think many people end up with multiple retirement ages. They may have a separate retirement age from every different program or every pool of assets they have available to them. So a lot of these models are certainly simplified in many respects because of that. What's kind of missing here to me a certain part is input from the industries who believe that they want to significantly increase employment of people over 65. Because I don't see a lot of that. I see that somewhat in the trades, whether it's plumbers or bricklayers, etc., where there isn't enough input into those occupations to actually cover off the people who are retiring. But I'm not seeing from the conference board, HR committee, or whatever saying, you know, we really need to extend people in all these different occupations, because if people aren't working significantly more past 65, then moving the retirement age is just basically making things a lot harder for them. I just want to talk about Bruce's college's example, because I see that in that programs for plans that had significant early retirement subsidies, but where people aren't entering the workforce or entering those occupations early as they used to, then there's been a big pushback. Now, whether that's a change in the retirement age or whatever, but it's an acknowledgement that the workforce demographics have changed, and therefore the programs have to change to adjust to them. The other thing about the Canada Pension Plan example was it didn't actually show that the Canada Pension Plan's been very flexible. Remember, we improved benefits a while back, and now we're taking benefits away. So that may happen again, and that message is, I think, is important to Canadians, that the Canada Pension Plan is a flexible program. It's one of the original, call it even a target benefit plan, if you want to call it, right, because of the way it's worked back and forth. And also, the other thing I didn't see here is the impact of tax policy, which is so difficult to anticipate, because right now we have a clawback on OAS. If we wanted to target OAS benefits better to the lower income people, we could just lower the threshold for clawback and make sure nobody above a certain level got any OAS benefits without actually changing the program. Bottom line is retirement's damn expensive, no matter how you look at it. And I've always used a three-pronged model, which you got investment income, you've got contributions, and you've got benefits. And we're almost at a point where contributions can't go up much more. There's not much tolerance for it. You're not going to get more out of the investment side of it, so we're tinkering in that benefits piece, and I think a lot of it's going to be what are we willing to tolerate. So anyways, those are just some thoughts.
Thanks, Barry. Any comments back? We don't have to, but any comments back? Bruce?
Yeah, certainly on the CPP episode, my observation would be that the toughest internal discussions were around benefit cuts and what was going to be called tolerable, and how to find something that might be acceptable to fly. There's a lot of political, popular resistance to benefit cuts.
You want to jump in, John? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, just one point on the Canada Pension Plan about the self-adjustment mechanism. And Bruce mentioned the, let's see, he didn't use the word difficult, but it was difficult to convince all stakeholders back in 1996 and in 1997 to increase contribution rates by 70%. Of course, there were some reduction in future benefits increases, but at the same time, a couple of provinces have said we don't want to be in this situation anymore in the future. And they introduce self-adjustment mechanisms, which is briefly, if the contribution rate calculated by the actuary is higher than 9.9%, and there is no decision by provincial ministers of finance, then suppose that the contribution rate is 10.1, half of it goes in a sudden increase in the contribution rate, and the other half is financed by non-indexing benefits until the next actual report or until the financial sustainability is restored. And this is quite a strong feature of the plan. It doesn't mean that the politicians don't have to take their responsibility. They still have to think about the future of the plan, but if they don't agree, these adjustment mechanisms will kick in, which means that the Canada Pension Plan is effectively a target benefit pension plan.
Daniel, and then I'll get to you, Asia. Daniel? Sorry.
Thank you very much for the very good presentations and the insights. I would just argue against the statement that retirement is expensive and will become more expensive. It need not to be. I mean, to cover basic and not so basic needs, it's cheaper. I mean, food, think about food, think about basic housing, even travel, certain leisure is getting cheaper. I mean, we're getting more productive into producing things and being more effective. Even basic healthcare will become cheaper. I mean, imagine the aspirin was a revolution decades ago, and it's almost free now. Even keeping someone artificially alive will be cheaper. If that is desirable, it's another thing. You can always retire in Mexico. It's cheap, right? And of course, other non-so-basic needs, as luxury traveling or luxury cars or the newest gadget, yes, those will become more expensive. So it depends what we mean and how we want to spend our retirement, but probably that's more to do with the individual or what companies can offer rather than with Social Security. We should be more concerned about alleviating poverty. And as you mentioned, I mean, increasing the retirement age is not always the smartest thing to do. Under certain circumstances, there are some other choices. Migration, for example. I mean, we can certainly send a couple Mexican young hard workers for every Canadian coming to live to Mexico.
Thank you. Actually, I think ingrained, embedded in your comment is another philosophical statement, and that is, for what should society be responsible and for what should the individual be left? And the Canadian system, as Jean-Claude points out, it's pretty small on what society is responsible for, OAS, GIS, and the rest, even CPP being contributory, it's very much an individual responsibility. Other countries in the world, it's remarkably different. The United States would be more individual responsibility than Canada. So I think there's another way then to philosophically have a discussion about your comments, and that is this line between societal response and individual. I'm not going to ask for more comments, but Asia?
Thank you, Rob. First of all, I'd like to thank all 4 excellent speakers for extremely interesting presentations. And as a working group, we enjoyed all your comments, and you definitely gave a lot of things to think about. What I would like to point out is the theme that kind of went mentioned by 3 presentations in Bruce, Brad, and Chris, is how the changes are discussed and how changes are made. One of the big success, in my view, one of the necessity for success of any policy is the cooperation between social partners. And I think that probably with what Bruce was saying, that reforms to the college pension plan, he said it was a discussion between trustees, partners, and this is why you probably were successful. And even the best policy can be completely undermined if there's no discussion, if the society doesn't accept it, if it's not a justification is provided, and that's exactly what Bruce was saying about Canada, and in some way Chris, when he mentioned that all of a sudden out of blue, the requirement to purchase annuities was announced in UK. So it's not really a question, it's more like a comment to discussion, how actors can be involved, how can we kind of facilitate this dialogue, and in some way, it's a requirement to you guys, please do involve us, because you are the one from government, you are the one, the policymakers, just come to us, and let's discuss this all together. Thank you.
Comments?
I think there's some truth to that. I think I've seen in the report that you've presented here what I would consider to be kind of a good discussion on the issues of eligibility age changes or retirement age changes. I think the Canadian Institute of Actuaries did a similar paper a few years ago that Rob Brown authored. But those are kind of the conversation amongst social partners that really hasn't happened in advance of some of these changes. So I think it's very necessary, not only to bring the sponsors along, the social partners, but also to bring stakeholders, Canadians along with these types of changes. So I agree.
I have to be careful here, Brad. I chaired the committee task force that wrote the report, but there are other authors in the room who won't buy me a beer tonight if we let that statement lie the way it is. So. Chris?
Is this on? Yes, I think in the UK, historically, we've had a more collaborative approach. I think, and in fact, the auto-enrollment and the higher state pension were things that came out of the Pension Commission, which we had a few years ago, which ran for a couple of years and involved lots of submissions by all sorts of people, including the profession. The change to annuitisation just came out of the blue and wasn't even consultation with the Department for Work and Pensions. It was just a Ministry of Finance decision, which you could see is probably taken on tax grounds or perhaps political grounds, because it was seen to be a political popular move. But I would just add, wearing the hat that I've officially got on today, which is from a European perspective rather than a UK one, the Social Security Subcommittee of Europe is, of the AEE, the Actuarial Association of Europe, is working very hard to try to raise public policy issues in the European context. And so we're trying to distill material which is out there, and the European Union produces masses of it. This year we've had 2 600-page reports on costs of pensions and adequacy of pensions and so on. But to distill that down to a relatively small amount of information, which is presented in an actuarial way, but in a way which we think we can then communicate with members of the European Parliament and with other stakeholders to try to demonstrate that actuaries have something useful to say. So I think we're trying to address that communication issue, but it's hard in this field which is so full of information. When you're talking Europe, you're talking 28 countries, and they're all doing something different, so that there is quite a lot of complication in the whole topic. But to try to make clear points which can help discussion is something that is our ambition anyway.
Yes, Bruce.
Yeah, I could just confirm, Asiya, that I think the college plan reforms were very successful because of governance arrangements that had been put in 2000. So in effect, that plan reformed its governance first, clarified new amendment procedures that forced a lot of collaboration, et cetera, and then subsequently did an important set of reforms to achieve sustainability, and then went on into this set of reforms that I was talking about. But you know, they're all sort of enabled by the governance discussions. And to make the parallel on Canada pension plan side, I think it's all the more remarkable that Canada does from time to time manage to reform those arrangements, notwithstanding that it's mired in a constitutionally very complex situation that needs a lot of intergovernmental cooperation.
Anyone else? Well, I'm going to throw something into the mix for you to consider over the next 3 days as you're here, 3.5 days, or on your way home. We look at societal responsibilities, and we tend to look at them in old age as alleviating poverty and providing some replacement ratios starting at age 65, 66, 67. There's part of a report that came out of the province of Quebec called the Demore Report that has been alluded to that I found fascinating. We're now increasingly in a defined contribution world in terms of the private sector, the individual responsibility part of this jigsaw puzzle. And what was introduced there philosophically was the idea of longevity catastrophe reinsurance layer. Demore actually talked about having a new layer of Social Security starting at age 75. Personally, I would start it at age 85 for a variety of reasons. But the point is, if I know that I've got longevity reinsurance that's going to kick in at 85, catastrophic event, then I know how to draw down my DC money. And one of the big problems in the DC world is the drawdown. You don't know how long you're going to live, and you don't know how to draw it down. And what typically happens is you either do it too quickly or too slowly, both of which are not optimal. And this whole idea of this catastrophe longevity reinsurance, I think, is kind of a brilliant concept, worthy of another task force, another paper, another discussion. But I'll leave that to you to discuss amongst yourselves. I think it's kind of a neat idea. And Sam wants to jump up and say something.
I'd just like to say from a member of the working group that this is not the final paper. This is still a work in process, so I very much appreciated the comments and observations that were made regarding it. And if others here have also other inputs, either concerns or areas that need better tying together, more cogent arguments, everyone in the working group would appreciate it.
Nancy, I think you have some closing comments. We'll just stay where we are.
So thank you again for all of you being here today. I hope, like from my personal point of view and from point of view of our working group is a success. We had brilliant speakers in the morning and the afternoon, and include myself, of course, that I would like to thank. And please give them a round of applause. We had a wonderful moderator who, as usual, kept us to task and kept us very well focused. Thank you, Rob. I also would like to thank the Secretariat, Christian, who is here, Carlo, who is busy at the end preparing press release, and Anne, who did amazing job organizing all this logistic setup of this beautiful room. So thank you very much. And thank you all for all your wonderful questions and your participation. Already we had several very, very excellent comments, and if any of you would like to give more comments of us, please send them to us, either to Secretariat, to Christian, or to me directly. We will be greatly appreciated if you can do it within the next 2 weeks, so by end of the month, because our plan is to prepare the new draft, to finalize it, and then promote it. So thank you again, and I have some small token of appreciation from the IAA to our speakers. Thanks again, and enjoy your lunch and the rest of your stay.
That's my conclusion slide. That's my end. It's a little like, he hasn't. Not Bruce.
Thank you.
Well, I hope
Great.
is going to credit
Singapore already introduced that.